Today's the 23rd of May. I'm Chloe Louise Wood and I am the role of therapist. This is my LP, Leslie Nulty, playing the role of a client called Angela. I'm going to be using person-centred technique with some interventions that echo CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
So Angela, last time you were here, we talked about some problems that you've been having at home, and you explained to me the effect it was having on you personally and how sad you were feeling about things. How have things been since we last met?
Not good really. I feel that it helped when we discussed everything. It definitely did help. I thought I had a clearer way forward and that I could deal with it all. But I think things have gone from bad to worse really.
I'm terribly sorry to hear that, Angela. So, last time you were explaining to me that there had been some behaviours on the part of your husband that were making you feel a bit unhappy.
Yes, I should say that I have had trust issues in the past, and so I did have to challenge myself and say, is this you? Is it just how you are feeling? And even after we spoke, I did have that idea in my head that I was to blame, and I was feeling very low because I was thinking, why on earth am I doing this? All that being cheated on and not being able to trust someone, all that's in the past. What's happening now is I'm in a trusting relationship with someone that I never had reason to distrust. And so I felt that it was all on me. And that was the overlying thing, that when I came away from the last session, I wanted to change me, to deal with the issues I had with the help of my husband, who is totally aware of all that.
Okay.
But do you remember I mentioned to you all the things that I thought were odd?
Yes, so
that were making me feel unhappy and distrusting in the relationship. Things like when he changed his passcode on his phone, because he's always stressed how important it is to him that his phone is there and that it's always on, because he has a busy work schedule, and I've never known him change his passcode. So I couldn't see any reason for it, and he didn't really give a valid reason. He just said, oh, something to do with scamming or, something like that. And that made me feel a little bit, oh, what's going on? Why has he done that? And then he'd cover his phone up or move away or go to another room. And he's always been one of these people, business comes first. When he's got a works phone call, doesn't matter what we're doing, doesn't matter if we're eating, watching a film, out somewhere even, he'll always take that phone call immediately, and he never says, oh, I'll just be a minute, or anything like that, which he had started doing. And further than that, when he does have to go out, he has to go to meetings or to just little chats with clients or with work colleagues, I know that, and he has always done that. And generally will say, okay, love, I'm going out, I'm just going over to Manchester, I'm meeting up with such a body, I'll be an hour and a half tops, and then if you want to do something later, we'll sort it out, have a think. And he stopped getting back at the right time, and being a bit cagey about why he was late. And I was challenging him about it and saying, you know, oh, I expected you back. You said you'd be back at such a time. And then he started making comments like, oh, I didn't realise I was on the clock, or something like that, which again made me feel bad, because I thought, I'm the problem. I'm making him feel bad. And
But these
so I let things go.
But these changes are making you feel different in the relationship and causing some worry.
Yes, absolutely. I've never really been suspicious with him. I've always had that under control, because even though it had happened in the past, it wasn't something that ever reared its head in this relationship. So it was a surprise when he started behaving differently, and my reaction to it.
Yeah, so you felt quite triggered by these things happening. And then we talked last time about perhaps being more open in the relationship about this feeling of worry. How did that go?
Well, I took it on board, obviously, and as soon as I met up with him after the session with you, I said to Steve, well, look, I've been advised that I've got to be open when I'm feeling down about something, or if I'm not happy about something, I've got to bring it up and we discuss it and put it to bed there and then, not to sort of dwell on things. And so yes, we did discuss it, and it went well at first. I did say, well, look, I was a bit worried tonight you were out later than I thought, or you know, I was having bad feelings and I need to tell you that. And he had said, well, look, whatever I can do to stop you feeling this way, I will do whatever you've been told to do. So at first he did, and he would say, well, look, this is where I was, who I was with, whatever, and explain everything to me. And it made me feel so much better. And I felt we were closer because of it. I felt we were getting to an understanding, and the feelings were getting better from my perspective, because he was so open with me and explained everything, and because he was willing to do that, I thought, well, yes, he does want this to work.
So it started to feel a bit more like teamwork, and kind of that feeling that we discussed of being together against the problem rather than against each other.
Yes, that's exactly it. It was this feeling of, well, we're a team, we're going to beat this. And he sees it that way. That was the important thing to me, that I was no longer the problem, and he was the one who was getting all the stick and the flack about everything that I was feeling.
Yeah.
It felt like he, as much as I did, wanted to get beyond it.
Yeah. That's really important. And so you said at the beginning that things were going a bit bad to worse. So what happened next?
Well, as I said, that was at first, when we first talked after our session together, and it seemed to be going so well. But then gradually things changed, and instead of saying, okay, let's do it then, let's talk about it, what do you want to know, you know, whatever, instead of that reaction, if I said to him, I was a bit worried when you were out today, or you know, if I asked about a phone call and say, who was that? You know, he'd say, oh, that again, why do we have to have this again? It was such a body from work. Yeah, is that enough? And the attitude changed completely, and I saw it straight away, and I felt really hurt because I had thought how well it was going.
So, so you were hurt that it wasn't being continued, that progress that you had of being able to communicate the fears and almost being reassured on them.
Yes, absolutely, and yet there was part of me that was saying, well, this is your fault though. It's no wonder he's getting fed up with it. Would you like it if every time you went out you had to give an account of where you'd been and who you'd been with? But I was trying so hard not to make it every time, just to bring it up when I felt it was dwelling on my mind. And he started saying, oh look, do we have to do this now? Can we not just leave it for one night? I've told you, I was out with a client, I've got a busy day ahead tomorrow, I can't do this now. And instead of being reassuring and, yeah, okay, let's talk about it, it was a complete opposite turn to him then being, he wasn't bullying, but more aggressive in his response to my concerns.
So he was responding with frustration and that kind of angry feeling rather than communicating openly and seeming like he understood where you were coming from.
Yeah, and again I thought, well, I'm pushing him too far. So it always came back to me then dwelling on things. But there's it's like a double-edged sword. Part of me was saying, well, it's my fault. He's not done anything wrong, it's all in my head. And then part of me thinking, but is it? Why did you feel that way? You've generally got a good head for things like that. And so it never went away completely.
And so what happened next?
Well, we had some friends round one evening, and we had a lovely meal, everything was going fine, friends that we've not seen for a long while, so it was quite good to feel involved in a social thing that didn't involve his work, and unusually he didn't have any works calls or anything that evening, so it was really nice. And felt so comforting, and the food was good as well, and I was congratulating myself on being a good hostess that night and so forth. So a really lovely night.
Yeah.
But then we were sat just chatting after the meal with a glass of wine, and he got a phone call. And he said, oh, I do need to take this, I'll just go outside, and went out into the garden. And I could see him from the lounge as we were just chatting on, but I was watching his reaction to the phone call, and he was totally relaxed and laughing and giggling and looked at ease. And so when he came back in, he made some excuse, and I don't know what it was now, whether it was a works call or it was a scam call, but it involved the bank, so he had to take it on. Something that made it legitimate that he had to take that phone call, but it didn't add up. The picture of him in the garden taking the phone call and what he said it was just didn't tally in my head.
So it was like the way you'd seen him speaking. What did that remind you of? What kind of conversation did he feel it was rather than a bank one?
It reminded me of when we first met, and we would be on a date, and he was always so upbeat and happy, and I know things change when you're married, and we've been married some time, so you know it's understandable that you're not always, you know, because you're dealing with life, you're dealing with the household and everything else. But I haven't seen him that way in a while with me, and it just seemed like, well, what's made him so happy then that he's so much happy, even happier than during the evening, even though the evening had gone so well.
Yeah.
He hadn't been that chirpy person that he was in the garden on the phone call.
And at this point, did you then speak to him, or I assume you didn't because friends were there, so...
Yeah, I let it go, but I couldn't help for the rest of the evening. They only stayed perhaps another hour, but for the rest of that time, the germ of doubt was there in my head, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I think I did say something to him about the phone call, and he just said, well, you know, it is what it is, I had to do that, or whatever. He didn't really explain it terribly well, and I let it go, as I had started doing again, but it was playing on my mind. And I think I said to you before that he had started putting his phone under his pillow at night time.
Yeah.
And he'd never done that before until recently. And that was one of the things that made me a little bit suspicious of his changing. And so I just couldn't let it go. And that night, for some reason, he hadn't put his phone under the pillow. And sometime previously, he had answered his phone, sat on the settee with me while we were watching a film or something. And so I kind of made a mental note. This sounds so awful, doesn't it?
No.
I made a mental note of his passcode, because I thought if I ever needed to know anything, it would be on his phone. That would be where the answers lay. And because I wasn't getting the responses I needed from him, I did that night pick up his phone, and when he was fast asleep, I scrolled through his messages on his phone.
You won't be the first person that's looked on their partner's phone. It's not ideal, it's not what we would advise, but clearly there was something in your mind that made you do so. So what happened when you looked? What was there?
Well, first of all, I do think you're right. It's something I've always said, and even in previous relationships when things have been bad, I've never done it. And I've always said it's a really bad thing to do. Even with parents looking at their children's phone and things like that, although sometimes my friends have said, well, I need it to know, you know, such a thing. But I'd always been against it, and so it was something that was really out of character for me to do that. And so I think it shows the position, the state I was in, to even feel that was acceptable.
Yeah.
But anyway, as it turns out, I was right to have my suspicions.
Okay.
I looked at his messages, and there was a long history of messages. Now, there is something, I don't remember if we talked about it when I was telling you why and how the suspicions had come about.
Okay.
But I mean, do you want me to tell you about that?
Yeah, start from the beginning and then...
Well, he started a new job, and it was great prospects. He was thrilled, and it was a team mainly men, but there was one lady in the team. And she was married, and obviously at first he was telling me all about the people in his team and what he thought of them, and you know, he said this lady was nice, but she was married and they didn't have to work together very much or anything like this. So he didn't know her that well, he didn't have much to do with her, and he told me, excuse me, that the people he had most to do with were such a body and such a body, and so it didn't trigger anything at that time. But then I had to go into the office one day, several months later, and he particularly said he needed to have a lunch with him that day because he had meetings back to back and wouldn't be able to get out of the office. And I'd made him up a packed lunch and he'd not taken it.
Right.
So I had the time that day to bob it on the way to going out myself. So I bobbed it into the office, and they were, all the team were there, and you know, several of the men introduced themselves and said how nice it was to meet me and so forth. But I detected a very frosty reaction from the one lady, and she seemed somehow not to think that I should be in the office or something, and I got a distinct feeling that she didn't like me going there.
Yeah.
And also I kind of had a feeling of tension with Steve that I'd gone in unexpectedly because he'd totally forgotten about the lunch, and I hadn't messaged him to say I was going to bring it.
So he didn't seem grateful that you'd helped with that.
He seemed to want to get me out as quickly as possible, and at the time I just thought, well, I've interfered with their work, so I understand that, and I don't normally go near the office, so so that was another occasion. Thinking about that later, I thought, well, why was he so cagey, and why was that lady so? She's no reason to be resentful in any way about me, or you know, if she had an issue, she should have said something. If it was her position, I don't know. She should have said, perhaps, so we don't normally encourage people, partners or whatever, to come into the office. So, or Steve could have said it to me that evening, you know, or you know, such a body didn't like it, don't come into the office because such a body has been reprimanded about it, or we don't mix personal things with the business, or, but nothing like that was said, it all just passed by. And I just had this gut feeling that it wasn't anything like that, that there was more to it, and I couldn't put my finger on what that was. So we come back now to when I read the messages.
Okay.
And there's a long history of messages between my husband and the lady from work.
Right. Okay.
And it wasn't just a, hi, how was that meeting today kind of message. It became pretty obvious pretty quickly that they were having a relationship.
Okay, that's really sorry. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, more upsetting still was the fact that it had gone back 9 months previously.
Okay. And does that match the time in which you've been feeling this uncertain feeling that you've described?
Pretty much it does. Perhaps maybe a month or so different, and I think looking back, I don't know, but looking at the messages, because I read right back to the initial start, and I did wonder if things had progressed into the relationship over a period of weeks, and therefore I do remember him saying that on one occasion there had been a business meeting which involved going out for dinner, which wasn't unusual. They do it all the time. Because I think it's to do with expenses and things like this that they can claim back, and so it makes a tedious meeting into a little bit more of an interesting evening, and also they can then maybe have a little chat and a little personal time after the meeting has gone by. But I do remember one time he said that he'd had a drink with this lady from the team after the meeting and the meal with his colleagues was over. And I do remember challenging him about it, although at the time I don't think I put two and two together. I think that must have been in my head when I started to have doubts about our relationship, because I remember thinking at the time, well, that was honest of him to tell me that he didn't need to.
Yeah.
He could have just said it, that he had a drink with some of the team or something like that, but he particularly said he'd had drinks with the lady. And looking back now and having seen the messages, I think I don't even know if there was a meeting that evening. I think they had met up, and possibly the reason that he told me was to cover his tracks in case anybody had seen them together.
Yeah.
So that I would say, oh yes, that's right. He did tell me after the meeting he'd had drinks with the lady.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have been a surprise to have heard he was somewhere with her.
No, not at the time, but having now read the messages, and I think it was a planned meeting between the two of them and not involving anybody else, as I take it now. But.
And so once you'd found these messages, what happened next? Did you speak to Steve about it?
Well, the whole time, since the reversal again back to the old pattern of us communicating, he'd very much taken up you're the one who needs counselling. And instead of it being a positive thing and let's deal with it together, it had become, oh look, go and tell your counsellor what you just said to me, see what she says, see if she thinks it's normal, see if she thinks it's reasonable for you to challenge me all the time. How does it make me feel? Have you thought about that? Your paranoia is beginning to ruin the relationship. So if that's what you want, then carry on. And that's exactly what he did. He was defensive even after I'd seen the evidence.
Okay, so he didn't hold his hands up and say, I'm terribly sorry, this is what's occurred.
No, not then, not immediately, but the next day he packed some things, and he didn't really say much except he has a grown-up daughter who has a house and family, and he said, I'm going to my daughter's house. I don't see this working between us, do you? And he didn't wait for a reply or ask for a reply. It was just, you've made your decision, I'm going to my daughter's. And he didn't justify or anything. He didn't say he was sorry, didn't say he was going to end it or anything. So I was just totally devastated. I'd gone from one day feeling that at least I had a relationship and a home and a husband and everything that we'd built together, to the next day it all being meaningless because he's not there. So that leaves me in a state really, I mentally and economically, obviously, because I can't carry on my own doing what we did together.
So now you're left in a situation where everything's changed and it wasn't really your choice.
Well, yes. I've I've tried to communicate with him, and he doesn't mention the affair. He doesn't acknowledge that he is. I don't even know if he is still seeing the lady, because she, like I said, she is married.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much I don't think her husband knows, but I don't know more than that. He has not. He's chosen not to enlighten me about what his future life looks like. I just know that for the time being anyway, he is at his daughter's and he has no intention of sorting things out with me.
And so how does that leave you feeling about your future now, Angela?
Well, the whole point of seeing a counsellor was so that we could build a future together. And so now I feel like it's just like it's been a house of cards. It's just been knocked down completely. There's nothing really left in my life.
Okay. And when those thoughts are occurring, these thoughts of there's nothing at all, can we think of a way to change them and replace them with more positive thoughts about what you can look forward to the future, do you think?
Well, it's really hard just now because everything's so fresh. And I have grown-up children and grandchildren, and they're a delight to me, and so it feels wrong that I am so obsessed with a man who I know now to be a cheat, and so I think, you know, that probably is the way forward to, for the minute, forget all about that relationship and concentrate on what I have and what I can build with them.
So perhaps when those thoughts come about what's happened, which they will, because this is all very new, if you can try your best to focus instead on a thought that makes you feel pleasure or happiness, maybe thought about your grandchildren or plans you have with them, reminding yourself that you do have a very full life. This is only one aspect of it. And so distracting your thoughts away from that, life's never going to be the same, and maybe more towards what you want to focus on, which is, you've said, your grandchildren and making their lives happy and special.
And an issue is that I've not actually told anyone yet about any of this. I've not even told my closest friends or my family.
I understand that, it's all very new, and it's your choice as to when you disclose this to people, because it's very delicate for you. So what I would say is, don't feel obliged to tell people. You can take your time and process what's happened, and then when you're ready to tell people, or if at all, you can make that decision by yourself. Have you got anyone that you rely on, you can trust, in terms of someone to communicate with, a good friend, or?
I do have good friends, but at the moment, because a lot of our friends are common friends because we've been together a long time now, and so the husbands, for example, are very much friends with my husband, and the girls are in their relationships, and I have noticed already that when I have sort of tried to broach the situation, I went for lunch with some friends recently and I wanted to tell them, but it seemed that they're very much involved in their own lives and their own relationships, and I didn't feel like, I felt out of place and I didn't feel like I could tell them. And that might change because I don't know yet what the future holds completely, but hopefully, yes, I'll be able to be stronger with that and say to them, well, you know, I understand if your husbands want to meet up with him, that's not my concern, but as long as we have a friendship,
Mm.
I can't imagine it will involve couples nights and so
Mhm.
forth, but certainly I can still meet up with my friends, and hopefully one particular friend I think will be not exactly a shoulder to cry on, but you know, someone I can trust to listen and not be too judgmental, because I know in the past I've shared secrets with her and they haven't gone any further. So yeah,
It's important that you have that feeling of support rather than dealing with this on your own, which it feels at the moment. Do you think that you would want to have a conversation with Steve for closure purposes? Because it feels like he left and you've been left without the explanations that you need.
yes, you're right. In a way, I feel like I can't move on until I know exactly where we're at, because part of me thinks, is he going to think he's made a big mistake, and the lady might not want to continue the relationship now there's a chance it's being found out, or they might want to move forward together, but the thing is I don't know any of it, so so yes, possibly you're right, I need to even if it's just to say, because there are massive financial implications, I think perhaps we ought to meet up with a view to sorting all our finances out and so forth. We have a joint account, and so I don't even know where that leaves me with that account, although I don't, because I have my own work, I don't need to go into that account as such, but we have a mortgage, we have lots of financial commitments, and so it will need to be sorted out. And I don't want to just go to a solicitor and say, you know, we're going to be divorcing, we need to separate the finances. So I would, and as well as that, we have made plans for the future, which sounds absolutely ridiculous now when I think about it. I'm almost angry that I thought I had a future. We were talking, we've made bookings for holidays, and obviously I can't really go ahead with those bookings, even if I take somebody else, I don't know who, but if I were to change that or go on my own, I think there would be a constant reminder that it was a holiday that had been booked for us. So we will need to sort it out, but he is still not replying to my messages, and I've tried to be as discreet as possible and just not challenged him. I don't want to prove him right, but or have him say, well, I've only done this because of you, because of your attitude, or because of your paranoia. I don't want him to use that as an excuse. But
you have to remember, Angela, that he's made a decision and his actions say more about himself and where he is emotionally than they do about your conduct and behaviour. One thing that is important is that you continue to speak and get things off your chest, and I would suggest we're coming towards the end of our session today. Do you want to come again on this time next week, and we'll catch up as to where you're at with conversation with him, whether he's now responding. Maybe it very well be that he's taking his time because he may be ashamed of it, how he's behaved, or he might be trying to catch up on where he is mentally as well. So perhaps if we arrange our session for next week, does that sound about right?
Do you think I should try to arrange a meeting with him in the meantime?
Yes, have a conversation if you can with him. You can always, end the conversation if it doesn't go well. But perhaps a bit of communication would be helpful, and maybe he's avoiding that because he's afraid of the response. So if you can attempt to be reasonable and show him who you are, which is a kind person, and this is a relationship where you very much loved this person. So have that conversation if you'll have it, and then I'll see you in a week's time and we can go through the feelings that come from that.
Okay.
Okay. Now take care, Angela, alright?
Thank you.